On today's episode of Gathering the Kings.
We actually started the division on September 10th, 2001.
Oh, goodness.
So our new electrician on September 11th was down in DC with guns pointed at him in his van, trying to go to work, with them saying, "You take everything out of your van and put it on the sidewalk." And that was his first night of work for us.
Goodness.
Or maybe that was his second night of work for us.
It makes it so much better that it was night two, you know. Night one, can't handle it. Night two, we're good to go.
You are listening to Gathering the Kings with Chaz Wolfe, featuring fellow 7, 8, and even 9-figure business owners who have real battle scars from business and life, but have prevailed as the king that they are designed to be. We welcome high-performing entrepreneurs to the stage in order to reveal the real of the real on what it takes to build a successful business today. We dissect the good and bad decisions they've made along the way that give a true and accurate picture of the journey of success and how you too can get there. Through this dialogue, you will learn the value of growing your network and surrounding yourself with power players and kings like today's guest. Grab your pen and notebook because we're about to dive in.
What's up, everybody? I'm Chaz Wolfe, Gathering the Kings podcast. I'm your host. And today I've got Dave Dassoulas here on the King stage. Dave, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing well. Thank you.
You know, I didn't mention this to you off air, but you're sitting next to some beautiful country there. Looking out your window, I can see the autumn colors in the trees. You've got a beautiful place there.
It is. That is my backyard, and it's in the fall array, my favorite time until the leaves come off.
Yeah.
And then it gets a little bit gray, and then we wait like crazy for spring.
That's right. That's right. I feel the same way even about the Midwest. It's like, you know, there's a couple of times a year, spring and fall, where it's like, man, this is beautiful weather. But the summer and the winter, man, some people like the snow, some people like the hot, and I would prefer about 78. I can do the changing of the trees. I like to hunt. We talked about that briefly, but I'm with you on that one. Kind of hold tight till the spring comes.
Definitely.
Dave, tell us what kind of business that you have, brother.
Okay. Well, Hope Builders is a commercial facility service construction business. We primarily serve national chain restaurants.
Okay.
And we do remodeling and we do maintenance and repairs. And so we have night guys that go in at night and they fix things up, change things out. And in the morning, customers right back in there,
Never
making
even
stuff. Never, well, hopefully. And then we have crews that are out all day long, fixing stuff, doors that come off, broken things, putting things back together, plumbing, electrical, carpentry. We do deliveries of equipment as well.
Wow.
And we are on call weekends. So we are, what do I call us? 24/5?
Yeah.
We're 24 hours a day, 5 days a week. And then we're on call all weekend. So It is a relentless business.
Yeah. It's like a full service thing that I need, building maintenance, delivery wise for my commercial building, it sounds like.
Yep. With a few exceptions. HVAC is not something we do. And we don't work on, say, the soda machines or all the equipment, just a few select things.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I'm excited to kind of dig into your story a little bit and hear how you built that relentless machine, as you said. Before we do that, though, I'm curious. At this stage, we've talked about, you know, your position in the company. I'd love for you to be able to tell us kind of what you're doing there and kind of like your hope at this stage in the business. I want to get to one other question before we get into your story, but tell us what your current role is in the business and why.
Okay. Well, my current role is I'm the vice president. I'm a co-founder, and I also call myself the chief culture officer.
Yeah.
So I'm very, very passionate about the special culture that we have. I promoted the vice president of the company a year and a half ago. And so he's now my boss and I'm the vice president. We switched positions. He's over sales, operations, and the whole company. I'm focused on leadership, which is the culture part. Finance and administration is my strength. And so I spend a lot of time mentoring the next generation of leaders in the company
Yeah.
and helping the finance and admin folks as well.
Yeah. I wanted you to say all that because I think it breathes hope, for maybe lack of better terms, maybe pun intended, to the listener, because man, they're doing it all right now, right? They're just trying to build. They're in the early stages, and to hear someone successful, uber successful like you, and to say something like, I promoted someone on my team to be my boss, right? There is like such a far distance of no ego in what you just said there, because it's intentional. And I love what you followed it up with by saying, I did that not because I needed to beat my chest and be the guy anymore, but I wanted to pour into the next phase. And for you, that's equally as important. I don't think it really matters the title or what departments he's over, or you, but I think the leadership and raising up the next generation is probably as important, if not even more. And I just loved your humility as you said that. I wanted the listener to really pick that up, because that's something that can happen in businesses. It doesn't have to always be, the grind and the push and the ego of look at me. And so I just think that you embody, even just the few minutes I've spent with you this morning, even before we hit the record button, you've just embodied humility and just the idea of being intentional. And so I want to explore that with you here this morning. But before we do, maybe this is a parlay into my next question. Maybe it's different. I don't know. What's your answer? But why is my question. Why did you start the business? What's really the big picture for you? Why are you still doing it? Like
Mhm.
what's your purpose?
Well, the why, you got to go back to about 1992. I was a senior vice president at a large general contractor. And I had, it all happened in conjunction with recruiting my brother-in-law, my wife's brother, Andy, to that company to start a small division there. And I had a dream at that time, and it was really birthed out of reading Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Successful People,
Sure.
writing a personal mission, and then leading that company into a mission-driven company.
Yeah.
And so that went on for a year and a half, and that division grew rapidly and was very successful in the midst of a recession. And it was mainly because it was focused on small work as opposed to the big work. And so a year and a half in, it became evident that I had a little bit different of a vision than my boss and the owner of the company.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't shake the thought that I wanted to have a mission driven company that focused on the people in the company, with the thought that if you satisfy your staff, they'll satisfy your customers.
Yeah.
And that takes all the pressure off of me to be the man. And so very unlike me, I started contemplating this seriously on December 22nd, and I resigned on December 27th,
Wow.
5 days later. And January 3rd, Hope Builders was incorporated, and we started a company with the owner's blessing to take that small division into our own company with
Yeah.
8 men and 3 days of work.
Wow.
It was a bumpy year.
I mean, you want to talk about starting something in a lightning quick fast mode. You had eight lives and families and not a whole lot of work and a bunch of experience and heart and grit, I'm sure. But man, there's other parts of the business that I'm sure you had to quickly learn. But what about at this stage? Like after all the success now, why do you exist now? Why does Hope exist now?
Well, I would say the vision of the company, which was not defined when we started,
Sure.
it took years and years to kind of put in words what was the heart of the initiation of the company. Our vision is to create and encourage opportunity to accomplish your greatest potential. And so our thinking and what drives me is to see people like myself, people that are not supposed to be anything, become something. And we've just seen this happen over and over and over again. So I just come from a background where I really wasn't supposed to be anything. And I just never listened to any of that. I just put one foot in front of the other. And you just put a day, a week, a month, a year on top of a year on top of a year. And the next thing you know, you're on top of a mountain looking down. And it's like, oh my goodness, look where we've gotten. Unfortunately, I look up and there seems like there's always another mountain.
Yeah, there's always these false
I've
tops, aren't there?
I've never arrived. So, when you use the word success, that word kind of scares me a little bit. All I can say is, we celebrated hard at 5 years because we knew very few companies ever started and made 5 years.
Right.
Super glad I did. That was in 99. And my mom died in 2000. So,
Wow.
so grateful that we paused to celebrate and got to include my mom in that.
Yeah. Well, you've said several things, whether you've realized it or not. The gold is flowing from your fountain there. But I actually wrote it down. I have done over 200 of these recordings, and I have written down, like, in the midst, had to grab my pen and write something down a couple of times. I remember things pretty well. I'll always go back after these shows and take a couple of notes of things that I really appreciated. Of course, I have a team that takes full on notes and all that fun stuff. But I literally just grabbed my pen and my notebook because I wrote down I wasn't supposed to be here. I wasn't supposed to be successful.
Mm-mm.
And I relate to that because obviously growing up single mom family, there's a lot of stats out there that, say I should be in prison or whatever. And I think the listener feels the same way. I don't know who the listener is. I don't know their name, but I know that they're an entrepreneur and they're pushing and shoving and grinding and they're trying to build this business. And it feels like a mountain. It feels like they're pushing a big old rock up the mountain. And to have a guy like you so simply say, I wasn't supposed to be here. I just kept taking another step. That's so simple, but so profound. I just wanted to sit in that for a second. And I want to give you a chance to respond to my comments because I want the listener, even if they needed to pause right now and just literally pause the podcast and think about where they are and probably why they shouldn't be there, how all the things have been against them, whether that's been people or circumstance or literal, roadblocks in life. I was just telling you before we got on the show, I didn't know my dad growing up. We met when I was 24 years old. He didn't even know I existed. I thought somebody else was my dad who was not even in my life.
Wow.
So I want to give you a chance to respond here, but in this sitting here for a second, realizing that neither one of us are supposed to be here, but yet we are. What are your thoughts on that, specifically to the person who's contemplating maybe they're not where they need to be, but they're not where they are even, they should be grateful for that. And of course, there's so much more. What are some comments that you can add here?
Well, I would say that success from at least my experience, and it's not everybody, but for me, the success is in the grind. And the fact that when you never give up, good things ultimately come out of it, even in failure.
Yeah.
That you just keep getting back up and fighting. So, I just go back to childhood, and this has been in me since I was born. I'm not an academic. I was like straight C student all the way through it. I got a college degree, which is, close to a miracle. My second semester at University of Maryland, I've got the lowest grade in the class. And the professor, pretty much mocked me in front of the class and then suggested that I drop the class and find something that I was capable of doing. And, that's the kind of thing that just ignites me into a fight. And so the next class, don't ask me how, but I got the highest grade in the class. So an F and an A equals a C. And that's the name of my education. Is a C for me was an A
Yeah.
because I got to keep moving.
Sure. Sure.
And so that's just kind of been a picture of my life in terms of, all the naysayers and the people that say you can't do that. I pretty much have not listened to those
Yeah.
people if I feel differently. And if I feel differently, I just keep scrapping and moving forward. So
Yeah.
that's
No, I think
that's who I've been, and it's still who I am.
yeah. It's interesting. As a young man, we were talking about this, some of the ages of your sons, and I'm right in between your sons. You wonder how things develop and change over the course of time. At 35, I look back and I go, okay, I'm different now than I was when I was 20, but my mind still is the same. I've grown, obviously, and I've matured and developed, but I'm still the same person. And so everything that you just said makes me think of some of those things of like, okay, so maybe you've been doing this longer, but who you are, especially in the mindset of like scrappy, grindy, like, don't tell me I can't do something because then I'm going to go do it. Like that, I think that relates to almost every single entrepreneur out there. And even for you at this level, it's like, that's still what gets you fired up. In fact, it's probably why you've made the transition in your own company, because it's like, okay, over there is where the fight is, where the scrappy is. It's in the building of the leaders. And that's where I want to put my hand to. You want to add anything to that before we move on?
No, I think you said it well. You've described it well. And I'm 65 and I'm still playing basketball. I played basketball last night with 20-year-olds.
That's awesome.
And I forget I'm 65.
Yeah.
As soon as the ball's on the court, the next thing you know, I'm on the floor diving for a ball. And then I get up and go,
I shouldn't have done
why? The next morning my hip hurts. And, it's like, when are you ever going to stop doing that? And, up to this point, I'm kind of still doing it. And I think with a lot more wisdom than before. I'm intentional about trying to preserve the body that I have so that I can keep doing what I love to do. So
well, you're better than I. I gave up the basketball.
And preservation.
Yeah, exactly.
Is my mantra at age 65. Preparation and preservation.
Well, I think that's a good mantra to live by. And man, you getting out there with some agility on the court, like that's inspiring, because I played basketball for the first 20 years of my life, pretty hardcore at a somewhat high level. And if I never saw another basketball, I would be just fine. I'm not 18 anymore, and I know it, and I don't have any interest. But it doesn't mean that physically. We talked about elk hunting, and one of your sons and I were both elk hunting in September. Like, there's always that physical, pressure next level. So let's go into your story a little bit. We've kind of a big picture of who you are and maybe why you're doing the things that you're doing. I want to talk about maybe the beginning. You talked briefly about why you started the company, but in the midst of those first couple of years, especially as you were building, you talked about maybe that first year being kind of bumpy. I want you to just generally tell me about that first year, and then I'm going to dial it down with a couple of questions. Just talk about that first year in business.
The first year in business was very difficult. We were not established. And so it was kind of hand to mouth. There was never a backlog. There was a number of times when the guys would come in and say, well, where am I going tomorrow? And there's no place to send them. And that was at, 3:00 or something. And then the phone rang at 4:00 and somebody they're just miracles in terms of the work coming in at the right time. Yeah. We did a relatively large residential addition. We started out 50% commercial and 50% residential.
Okay.
And so we had a payment problem with that person that put a huge strain on us as a business. Not the kind of thing you really want to, that's something for, after you're established and you got equity and cash flow and everything else. Now, you don't want that to happen. You don't want payment problems in your first year, but we had that too. So it was tough, and we got through. Our first year, we did $670,000 of construction business, which in 1994 that's a lot of
Yeah.
not a little bit about us.
Yeah.
And then we finished the year with 3 decent sized contracts signed. And so we were kind of established at the end of that year, and we went into the new year with a bit of a backlog. And I would say we never looked back.
Yeah.
So year one was a very difficult year, and we just kind of toughed it out.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's dive in here. I want to know, in that first year, specifically, since you said it kind of like sets you up, for the rest of your time, it sounds like, what was a good decision that you made in that time frame that you can share that maybe we can go replicate in our businesses?
Well, I think the best decision was we really focused on our only commercial customer, which was Fridays, TGI Fridays. That was a customer that followed us from the original company over,
Yeah.
and they were in a growth phase as a company, and so we hitched our wagon to their horses, and they really fueled our growth. And ultimately that was the momentum that resulted in us pivoting out of residential and focused entirely on commercial. So
Okay.
in those first few years, we started to phase out and of residential and really focus on the commercial. And then we started adding additional customers in the commercial world after that.
Yeah. Well, that's, recognizing what you're best at or where the money is in this example, maybe, and pressing into that. Do you think that if you had kept residential around, that you'd have the business that you do today, or would it be more spread out? Would it be more confused? Like, give us the
It-
consequence if you
yeah,
hadn't made that choice.
I think we are laser focused on commercial facility services, and
Yeah.
the other is just a different business. And so recognizing the differences and then looking at the marketing end in the residential, you're constantly having to generate leads. And in our business, once you get the customer, their needs never end. You don't have to develop new customers like you do elsewhere.
Right.
Our marketing budget is very low because our customers, their needs are relentless.
Yeah. Well, and keep your people in good condition, culturally wise, is probably why you're doing what you're doing, and then keep your customer happy. And it sounds
Hmm.
like you retain a good amount of the business every single year. What about a bad choice? That first year, something that you did that,
Hmm.
kind of wish you hadn't
Well,
done.
I'll go to about year 3 or 4.
Okay.
We decided to start an electrical division,
Okay.
and we had been awarded a addition on one of our locations. And so our we saw this as the opportunity. Now is the chance. We're going to add electrical, and we're going to do electrical in-house, and we're going to make all this money, and it's going to be a new department for us. And so what happened was greed was the motivator. It was all the money we were going to make was the motivator for starting this abruptly, almost similar to the way we started the company, except the motive to start the company wasn't greed. This other one was greed. And so we lost money out of the gates, and we shut it down after 2 months
Yeah.
because we were losing money faster. And the reason was we never thought it through.
Yeah.
We didn't, there was no organization behind it. It was just go do electric work kind of a thing on this location.
Yeah.
And so the good that came out of that was we made a decision that we wouldn't make any major decisions without counsel and presenting the decision to somebody to put holes into.
Right.
And so that was a costly mistake that wound up serving us for the next 25 years
Right.
very well. And we still practice that at this point. And then 2 years later, we wound up actually starting an electric division, which is still active and successful.
Hey, kings and queens, Chaz Wolfe. I want to talk to you about something that's super important to me. We put a lot of time and effort, we meaning myself and my team, into this podcast, into the content that goes out every single day. And if you have been getting any sort of value or insight from this, we want it to be able to reach other business owners too. So we would love if you would like, comment, share, leave a review, post, share again, all of the things on social media, on all the different platforms, or even on the podcast mediums of Apple and Spotify. We would love to be able to get our content into more hands, more entrepreneurs, so they can grow their business as quick as possible. Together, we are building a community of like-minded entrepreneurs who are committed to growing their businesses to new heights. So let's do this. Let's help each other. Let's help each other grow. Because you had mentioned that you're obviously doing electrical now. So I was in the story there, I was wondering when it actually rolled out. So what was the difference between that moment when you originally, and then 2 years later when you actually were profitably able to implement it?
The first one was we knew a guy and he was a good friend of ours, but we never thought it through. And
Okay.
so we ruined a good relationship with a very, very fine man that we chose to lead that. And, it's not good to hire somebody away from their job and then 2 months later tell them they're fired. Not a proud moment. But 2 years later, another opportunity came up with another very skilled person, and it was thought through, and there was structure, and we executed. We actually started the division on September 10th, 2001.
Oh, goodness.
So our new electrician on September 11th was down in DC with guns pointed at him in his van, trying to go to work, with them saying, "You take everything out of your van and put it on the sidewalk." And that was his first night of work for us.
Goodness.
Or maybe that was his second night of work for us.
It makes
I
it
think
so much
that-
better that it was night 2, Night 1, can't handle it. Night 2, we're good to go. Yeah, I mean, I guess you knew in that moment whether he was going to last or not. But in all seriousness, I think that the takeaway there for the listener, you've given several, but just real quick on that last little piece is, the execution of then the forethought plan. One last little quick follow-up question on that, because if the difference was that the second time around it was well thought out and then you executed on the well thought out plan, why not the first time spend some time to go, oh crap, we're losing money, rather than shutting it down? Spend the time to think about it. Why wouldn't that have worked, or why did you just elect to not?
Why would we not? Probably because we were busy.
Yeah.
Just running the business.
Should have been
Or
doing it anyway to begin.
Say the business running us. If you're like on a treadmill, you're going 100 miles an hour, and then you're like, let's just turn up the speed a little bit here.
Oh.
I would say that was the problem.
Yeah.
Not thinking, not having the time to think, and not taking the time to think.
Yeah, this is something that I think that even me personally, that I'm still walking through in my own companies, because I'm a doer, like what we just talked about. I'm a doer. I like to get things done. The challenge, we're very similar in that way. And what that doesn't normally leave a lot of time for is thinking. I like to think ahead. I like to plan, but it's like kind of build the ship at sea process. And what you eventually realize, and this is maybe more so for the listener right now, because I've learned and still learning, but learned these lessons the same as you have, is that you can do that for a period of time. You have to do that for a period of time. The warrior stage, right? As we call that in Gathering the Kings Mastermind. It's like you have to be able to fight the battle, be active. You got to survive. Maybe you can look out for the guy to your right and your left, but it's pretty much like you gotta figure it out. But then there comes a day where you the thinking time actually becomes more valuable than the fighting time. And that's really the depiction that you're giving, this king mindset of, hey, like when you feel like you don't have enough time to think, it's probably when you need to think the most. It's probably why that little set there didn't work for you. But 2 years later, when you had the time, you purposefully and intentionally sat down, you thought through, strengths, weaknesses, goods, bads, cons, pros, whatever you want to say, and then executed. So you want to add anything to that little mindset shift, maybe for the listener as we transition here?
Well, I'll be 29 years in January. And so at this phase, a mindset is building space. Like, don't hire people just to get the job done. Create space instead of staying in this
Rat
treadmill
yeah.
cycle. And so that would be, later on, there just has to be a realization that you can't just keep hiring to cover that. You need to create the space for yourself and your people. It's not space for me now. It's space for the leadership team to do things other than tasks. It's time for everybody to create space because you can't grow well without it.
Yeah, that's so true. I think that the listener's probably wondering, how do I do that? My calendar is already so full, things are running so crazy. But I would say that for me, literally adding it to my calendar, and then probably phase two is, which I'm still guilty of now, is having to defend that time. Like, it's on the calendar, and then I do not put anything in there. And that's still probably a battle that I face even still today. But you're 100% true. I love the depiction of down the road for the listener. You got to do this for yourself, but man, you're going to have a team that you got to do this for. And I think that we've probably all had the people that, because we're entrepreneurs, because we're fast moving, high performers, we just can burn people out because we can operate at a level that maybe some can't. And if we don't create that space for ourselves, no chance you're going to create it for them. And if you don't create it for them, you're probably just going to have a huge attrition problem. If we're just being honest. Okay. What about process or even mindset, maybe around making decisions today? We talked about a good and bad decision from your past and maybe when you were a little smaller. From a king's perspective now, how do you make decisions?
I don't make many decisions anymore. My role is to let other people make the decisions and be accessible to them to get answers and information based on what experience or intuition that I have. So I'm very intentional about not making decisions and letting other people do it. We have a leadership team that presently has, I'm on it. There's 4 others, and those people are running the company for the most part and doing an excellent job. I always say the company runs great without me. I hope it runs better with me. If it doesn't, then it's time for me to quit showing up.
Yeah. 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 And I think that the mindset of letting other people, it's really just the raising up, which kind of goes back to your now current role, is that when you raise up other leaders in your business, you realize that they're as good, if not better than you, which is a little bit of an ego check at the beginning because you feel like you still want to be needed or purposeful in the business. And so I think that you've given us that, even because maybe it's not in the tasks, but then it's in leading, making decisions still. But then even another layer on top of that is letting them do that also. So I think that you've given us this roadmap of maybe not only kingship, but what it means to be a sage after the king, like this full of wisdom, available, calm, perspective that I'm sure your leadership team very much appreciates. Any sort of a decision-making process that they go through as a team or collectively or individually around the business now?
Yeah. Well, we have some healthy patterns that are built into the business. And so we have a bi-weekly leadership team meeting. And then on top of that, we have a quarterly, we call it a summit, where we pull away for half a day or a whole day. We review the quarterly financials of the company. And that's more strategic in terms of bigger decisions.
Yep.
But the rhythm of every 2 weeks having a leadership team meeting where we just get together for a couple hours and everybody brings their responsibility to that meeting to either inform other people or to get counsel on some aspect of their job. And so that process, you don't have time for those meetings. You don't. I mean, the business is just relentless.
Yeah.
But you don't have the time not to have that. And then further, every leader meets with a direct report every 2 weeks. So we have this 2-week rhythm that is just, we call those meetings big rock meetings. And that goes back to 7 Habits and Covey. And he did this thing in the book, talks about if you don't put the big rocks in first, you'll never do them. So we just make it a priority to be talking about the things that if you put them off and wait for a crisis, they're going to be much more difficult to manage.
Yeah, 100%. Putting it on the calendar and getting in the habit of it. But then even in those meetings, which I love that you just gave, it's the discussion of the most important things, whether it's the leadership meeting where they're bringing these maybe individual situations or struggles or whatever, or just needing to be around some other high performers. Like from a listener's perspective, maybe they don't have a leadership team in their business, but they can go, to a local entrepreneurship meetup or have lunch with a couple of other guys, join a mastermind group or whatever, and get that counsel, if you will. And we don't have time for those things either. But
It's
we
hard.
don't have time not to do those things.
No, we don't. You're right.
It's the growth or what you don't know or who you don't know that is the question mark. And if you never do those things, the meeting, the group, the meetup with a buddy to talk specifically about business, if you don't do those things, then that question mark never gets filled, and you don't know what it could have been as far as like that one key that unlocks something. And I love the leadership team aspect because it's the same thing as a mastermind. It's like, hey, I'm dealing with this, and the other guy's like, hey, that's great. I did this with my team and it's worked. And it unlocks things when we step out, step away, get other perspective. I think it's just a huge mindset growth opportunity. You want to add anything to that?
I think that's good.
Okay. We're going to go to the speed round. I've got a couple of different unique questions in the speed round, but from a tracking perspective, I'm curious, what would you track if you could only pick one thing to track inside the business? What would that one thing be?
I wrestled with this. I'm an accountant by training. So, I'm a numbers guy. And I thought, well, cash is king. Cash, without cash, you can't operate. And so it's so easy for the busyness of a business to distract you from the lifeline that having cash flow affords you as a business.
Yeah.
So, I'm watching all sorts of numbers, but at the end of the day, if you miss that one, you go out of business.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of things that go into making a business and keeping it alive. But the fact of the matter is that it's only alive if it has cash. Very good perspective. I appreciate that. I think there's a lot of things that go into that. I was curious to see if you'd go culture or money, seeing that you're over both.
Oh, as far as tracking's concerned, okay.
Yeah.
I would, yeah. Well, I'm certainly passionate about the culture. That one's a difficult one to measure.
It is. And I think that I think even you making the moves that you have to own that side of the business speaks to the level of maturity in the business from a financial perspective. you can't do cool things with the team and culture if everybody's stressed about not making payroll. And so there's just a whole nother level that you can go to if the business is in a good position financially. Next question for you is, Dave, what book would you recommend, or maybe a resource for an entrepreneur trying to grow their business?
I would recommend Joshua Medcalf's book called Chop Wood, Carry Water.
Okay.
And
Give us the takeaway here.
It's a fable about a samurai archer. And so I would say it's kind of a Lencioni type style where he uses, even if you're not a reader, it's like every person I've given the book to, most of them start out with a kind of a funny look on me, and they always call back and say, I can't put the book down. Yeah. And it's so relevant to where each person is in life. It's a very simple book, but it is super accentuating this issue of the grind, faithful in little, faithful in much. And there's no shortcuts.
Yeah. And that's true. That's true. Even when maybe you personally are organizing the grind, maybe you're not literally the grinder, there's still a grind to that, or a stewardship to your perspective there of what's happening, even if you're not the one doing the task. Very similar to what you were just talking about with your leadership team, whether it's you or them, even now, potentially, you still have to have a stewardship, or I want to take good care of this thing, even if the thing isn't being done by you individually.
And let me just adjust you. It's Tim's leadership team.
Love it.
I'm honored to be a part of that.
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah, no, that's I think, again, just really, really healthy. There's a lot of ego in business, a lot of ego in sales, a lot of ego in money. And I just, every time I sense that it's not about that, I just love to highlight it, because I think it makes all the difference in the world. What is your thought on intentionally networking or masterminding with other entrepreneurs specifically?
Well, I'm a part of a business roundtable and have been since about 2012. I was looking for something like that, and a member of my community invited me to a business roundtable. And once I got there, I'm like, this is what I've been looking for. This is what I want. It's a place where other business owners come together. We can vent. It's safe. You realize that you're not the only guy feeling the way, you're in a room full of people that all feel alone.
Yeah.
And that saying, it's lonely at the top, is true. It's very lonely at the top. When you're at the top of a company, you can't talk to all your people about everything that's going on in your heart and your mind. And there's a lot of stuff that you just have to suppress because it's not going to be helpful.
Yeah.
But to have an environment to go into, where you can be transparent, where you can listen to other people's problems and other people's solutions. I mean, it's been wonderful.
Yeah. That's incredible. I appreciate the perspective. Obviously, it's what every business owner desires, whether they realize it or not. It's a missing link to accountability. It's a missing link to fuel, energy, just ideas. There's a lot of things that I've personally gotten out of that same format that you just talked about. So I appreciate that. One last question here for you. Dave, if you could whisper in the younger Dave's ear, what would you say?
Whisper in the younger Dave's ear. I would say, watch the pride. I would say, the quicker you can realize the value in other people is probably much more than the value that I add, the quicker I would have got there.
Yeah. So good. So good. I think that the listener probably got 2 or 3 doses of what they expected here today. And so I just so appreciate you pouring out, especially from a vulnerable perspective like that. How can the listener connect with you? Whether they're in the area and they need to become a customer of yours, or maybe they're just an entrepreneur, they want to reach out and they want to pick your brain, how can they find you?
Well, my email would be easy. It's dave@hopebuilders.com. That's
Easy enough.
pretty simple and easy, and I will eventually get back to you.
Well, we appreciate yourself making yourself available. We'll put that information in the show notes along with your website and just all your company information as well, and taking care of you there. But Dave, you've been incredible. Thank you so much for your time here today. To your family, your sons, your team, the leadership team, the business, everything. We just really appreciate you being here.
Thank you. It's been a joy.
Thank you for listening to Gathering the Kings today. I hope that you were able to pull out a few nuggets to go apply into your business right away. More importantly, though, I hope that you're realizing that it takes more to be successful than just being by yourself, doing it all on your own, carrying the weight all by yourself. What I have realized, not only in my own journey from multiple businesses and multiple different industries, and now interviewing over 200 or 300 other very successful 7, 8, and 9-figure business owners, is that it's tough to do it alone. And so Gathering the Kings exists to bring together successful entrepreneurs. In fact, we are putting together 1,000 kings, specifically who are grateful but not done. We're intentionally assembling kings who fight tooth and nail for their business, family, and communities. And here's what we believe, that in the pursuit of excellence in those areas, that it ignites within us the responsibility to govern power and forge a lasting legacy. So if that relates and resonates with you, and you know that you need people around you, sharp, qualified, other very successful business owners, I want you to go to gatheringthekings.com. I want you to take a look at what we're doing and see if it makes sense for you to be part of our pursuit to 1,000 kings. Talk soon.